trauma is kind of a habituation to a particular pattern of the mind that faces a kind of difficulty in life, right? So if you face a difficulty in life we find difficult to deal with, then we think about that particular event quite often, right? And we think about that event quite often also in a negative way. And that propels itself in a habituation pattern that even when you don't think about later on, it gets activated by the smallest kind of stimulation. So trauma is by itself probably just kind of an experience you don't like, and then you habituate your mind to that particular experience over a long period of time. And then that causes to trigger the mind whenever there's a kind of correlation with that particular trauma, and cause you to be negative, or cause you to be depressed, or cause you to be lonely or down or whatsoever. So it's probably related with this kind of pattern that has been built up over some time based on a kind of very intense negative event, right? So that's, generally speaking, probably what trauma is all about. But then how you deal with that, there's of course different interpretations, right?
Well, yes, and of course it's undoubtedly at the moment of the experience, it's almost a defense mechanism. The brain gets fixated in what has happened and all the elements around that situation, so as to be more prepared next time, in order even to escape, to freeze, to survive in any way it is possible. Nowadays, what is interesting about trauma is that it's being understood both from a neurological perspective, what neurotransmitters are involved when the event happens, and what neurotransmitters are then released each time we feel triggered or the person feels triggered with that original trauma. But more interestingly, now in the field, when working with children, it is being seen that many times children don't get hurt because of the event, but, and I guess it can be also applied to adults, but they get hurt because of the loneliness in which they have lived the event, not only during the event, but afterwards. So we are going back to the very essential field of connection. So nowadays, trauma is being, on the table so much more often than before, but I think it's not only a matter of neurologically speaking, what is happening in which area of the brain, but what is lacking for that negative event to get fixated in the brain and then producing those triggering effects years, even decades after.
Hey, Geshe, did you want to follow up briefly with the second part? I bet a few people would like to hear how you deal with trauma.
I mean, one particular aspect probably is in a similar structure, that you probably first have to get a kind of acceptance to a certain extent, right? And take distance from the event. And then you have a possibility to observe it from a neutral perspective, and you can much better deal with it than being involved in it again yourself. So that these kind of thought patterns don't take over, right? So that's probably one important aspect of recognition. And probably it helps to talk with other people who have similar experience to open up, because what happens, you think about this negative event, very, very often, and you're lonely by yourself, so you cannot express it, and it makes this habituation pattern only stronger and stronger and stronger, and that will repeat itself. Yeah. So one aspect is the acknowledgement and the openness about it probably is very, very essential in the first step of dealing with it, right? And then you have to think about certain aspects of coming and going of the mind and coming and going of events in life. And, that life has to go on, and just thinking about aspects again and again is not really going to solve the problem, so to say, right? So there are probably a lot of different methodologies to understand that it's a coming and going aspect. Life is not perfect, as we in the Buddhist doctrine, as you said, we often talk about suffering and death and impermanence, but it's a way to face the problem, right? So that's the first step, the way to face the problem, and then look for a constructive way how to solve the problem. So then with trauma, first acceptance should be there, and then you should analyze, talk with other people, and try to see that it's an event that happens not only to you, because there's more people like that, right? And then then it's a possibility to open up, and then it's a possibility to forgive yourself or forgive others. Of course, judgment should be there if there's misbehavior that should be corrected. But if corrected, then we have the mental issues to deal with, right? So with the mental issues to deal with, also then there should be a kind of acceptance and forgiveness in order to go to the next step, right? So that seems to be also quite important. We all make mistakes, and also that we should understand that is true in all of us, right? So that might help in the case of moving forwards. Yeah.